I'm Sarah Brown from the Lockdown Patchwork Project, and today I'm going to show you how to sash your quilted blocks together using the Quilt As You Go method of sashing. Now, as I've said before, the purpose of using this method is so that you're not battling with a whole quilt if you've never quilted before. In this example, I will be using a front sashing which is cut to 1 inch wide, a back sashing which is cut to 1.5 inches wide, folded in half lengthways, and I will be using a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. We have 4 quilted blocks here. I've quilted very simply. Now, the first thing I want to tell you about what has happened with these blocks is because I've only quilted them in one direction, they've only shrunk in one direction. So I would recommend that you quilt in both directions so that you get similar shrinkage. This has shrunk this in by 1/4 inch across a 6.5 inch block. So I'm now going to trim these all off, and then I'm going to show you how to join them together with sashing. We now have 4 blocks all quilted and now cut to exactly the same size. If you were doing a big quilt, you would make sure that all your blocks are trimmed to the same size before you start sashing. Now I'm going to show you how to join these blocks together. If you are joining 2 6.5 inch blocks together this way, they will end up measuring 13 inches by 13 inches. You need to refer back to block 43, which is the tulips, which shows you how to trim your blocks down so that you end up with your 4 pieces joined together, making a 12.5 inch block. The instructions in there are all clear and lots of people have used them, so we know they work. So to start with, I'm going to put the front sashing on the front, right sides together like that, and just pop a couple of pins in to hold it in place while we do that. And then I'm going to flip that over and I'm going to apply the folded sashing along the same raw edge like this. Can you see? So I'm just going to match it up so it's the fold is away from the raw edge of the block. And you will see I have got my walking foot on the sewing machine today. And the little trick I just want to show you is that if you've got a lot of materials that you need to get under the foot of your sewing machine and it's a bit bulky and it won't quite fit without a bit of a fight, if you press the button on the back of the lever on the back of your sewing machine foot one step higher, it lifts the foot like that, and you can get everything under there quite comfortably and get it all in the right place. And then we are going to set the sewing machine stitch to a scant 1/4 inch, and I'm now going to stitch. And my stitch length I've got is 3. So we've now joined the front and the back sashing to one block. So I'm now going to trim that off to there and trim that off to there. So we now need to attach the other side of the front sashing to one side of the next block like that, and I'm just going to pin that in place like this. And then I'm going to stitch all the way along that edge, and we're just joining the front sashing to one edge of the other of the next block. So again, I need to lift that. Now this is quite bulky. If you make your sashings wider, then the foot will sit in that gap, but because we're only doing a 1 inch cut sashing which finishes at 1/2 inch, the foot won't fit in there. So don't be tempted to trim off any wadding there might be that you think is a bit too much for that between the two blocks, because you need it all to fill that gap. So we've now got your sashing joined at the front, and at the back we have the sashing joined on one side, and you can see the wadding is all poking out a little bit. So we're just going to push that into the gap, flip that over like that, stretch it nice and tight so that's all compressed, pin it in place, and then what we're going to do is slip stitch all of that in place, and then we have a neat sashing on both sides of your blocks. So you have that on the back, that on the front, and you've got your two blocks joined together. We now have 2 blocks joined together here and 2 blocks joined together there, and as you'll see they've been stitched up the back, so this is all nice and neat. Now if you had 6 or 8 blocks in a row that you needed to join, you would simply join them exactly the same way all the way across. And now we're going to actually join these two like that, and we're going to use exactly the same method. So we are going to put the front sashing along this raw edge like this, and pin it in place. Just enough to hold it in place while we put the back sashing on. And it's exactly the same method as we've done here. We're going to do exactly the same right the way across the 2 blocks. If you were going to join a row of 6 blocks to another row of 6 blocks, you would just make this sashing the full width of your 6 blocks. So I'm now going to put the folded sashing on the back, and this is 1 inch sashing on the front, and if you then take away the 2/4 inch seam allowances that we use, that leaves you with a finished width of sashing of 1/2 inch. Pin this all in place, and then we'll whiz it through the sewing machine. Now some people just don't like all sashing because of the look that you get on the back, which you'll see in a minute, but it's all coming together nicely. So now I know that what I've got here is too long, I'm now going to trim this off, get it out of the way, and now I'm going to stitch along here. So again, I need to lift the foot up a little bit. I don't actually need the quilting bar on there, but it's still on there, but never mind. There we go. Drop that down and off we go. It doesn't matter whether you stitch from the front or from the back. And we're just attaching the 1 inch sashing on the front with right sides together, and then the folded sashing on the back. All the way along. So we now have the front sashing attached and the back sashing attached to a pair of the blocks. And we're now going to attach the other pair in exactly the same way. So I am going to make sure that these centre seams are matched up so we get a proper cross in the middle. It's worth taking a bit of time just to get that spot on right. And then I'm going to put a pin in there and then flip it over. And now I'm going to pin that all in place all the way along, just enough to hold it. And then I'm going to run it through the sewing machine. Now, again, my sewing machine's got a very funny buzzy noise at the moment. I think the bulb's about to go. Right, and off we go. I'm just making absolutely certain everything's sitting nice and flat and smooth. Now, don't be tempted to trim off any wadding, because you need all the wadding that's between the two blocks to fill the gap, because there's nothing worse than a saggy bit of sashing, because your quilt just won't sit as though it's finished properly. So there we go. So we now have, ta-da! That's the front, and with the back I need to do exactly what I did with the others. Turn it over, pin that all in place, tuck all that wadding in so you've got a nice firm filled space between the two, and then stitch it all in place by hand. Now, you'll have probably realised by now that actually, because you're doing the quilting in such small quantities, it makes it very much easier to handle, and that's the whole point of Quilt As You Go, making it more easy to get the finish you want on a domestic sewing machine, particularly if you're a beginner. And in the next video I will be showing you how to just sash your blocks together. You can use sashing as wide as you like then, and then after you've got your blocks all sashed together, you then put the wadding and the backing on them. It's a different method, a slightly different effect, but this is what we have got from, once that's all hand stitched, that's the look you will get on the back, that's the look you'll get on the front. So now we have our 4 blocks beautifully quilted and now sashed together, front and back. This one needs to be hand stitched to finish it off yet, but it doesn't matter how many blocks you have, you can join them all in this same way. Just remember that if you want to have wider sashing on between your blocks, then you have to use a wider seam allowance. In this example we use sashing which finishes at 1/2 inch wide, which gives quite a fine line. I will be putting a note in the Facebook page on the allowances that need to be made and the cutting list if you want to make your sashing wider. If you've got any queries or any questions, please put them in the comments box below this, and it would be lovely if you could subscribe to this YouTube channel and also press like down there. Thank you very much and see you again soon. Bye! Hello, I'm Sarah Brown from the Lockdown Patchwork Project.